news coverage. Cade had been clean for 2 years and worked construction, but wanted to help his sister after missing so much of her life. Lila introduced him to her husband Ramon, who ran a security company and needed reliable workers for overnight shifts at the office buildings. Cade took the job and moved into a small apartment near Becca, so he could watch the baby while she went to appointments. My husband hit the halfway mark of his 100 community service hours and came home talking about this kid named Isaac, who reminded him of himself at that age. The youth center had him teaching basic self-defense, but mostly he just listened to the kids talk about their problems at home. The anger management instructor noticed my husband was different too, and started having him help with the newer participants who were still in the angry phase. The second psychiatric evaluation results came back saying my sister was competent to stand trial, but had something called narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. The psychiatrist wrote that she understood right from wrong, but believed her desires were more important than other people's rights. She recommended at least 5 years of intensive therapy, whether my sister went to prison or not. Dad went back to work after taking 2 weeks off, but came home early his first day saying he couldn't handle the looks from his coworkers. His boss suggested he take early retirement with full benefits since he'd been there 28 years, and Dad started seriously considering it. That weekend I was cleaning out the garage and found a box of my sister's stuff from when she'd stayed with us last year. Inside were printed articles about international adoption and babies being sold to wealthy couples for $50,000 or more. There were notes in her handwriting about how to forge adoption papers and which countries had the least oversight. She'd bookmarked stories about people getting caught and highlighted what mistakes they'd made. The prosecutor added it to the evidence file and said it showed premeditation and that the kidnapping could have led to human trafficking. My husband's anger management instructor was this older guy named Frank, who'd been a Marine and then a cop before becoming a counselor. Frank started meeting with my husband one-on-one after the group sessions to talk about the difference between protecting people and attacking them. He made my husband write out what he was feeling in the moment before he punched my sister and what other options he could have chosen. They worked through scenarios where my husband had to practice de-escalation techniques even when he knew someone was doing something wrong. The prosecutor called me 2 months after the arrest to discuss a plea deal they were offering my sister. 15 years with the possibility of parole after 7 if she completed psychiatric treatment and showed genuine remorse. The alternative was going to trial where she could get 25 to life if the jury convicted her on all charges including attempted kidnapping of a minor. Becca got accepted into a GED program for young mothers that included free childcare during classes. The program met 3 nights a week and Saturday mornings at the community college. Cade adjusted his work schedule so he could watch the baby while Becca was in class, and Lila helped them set up a routine. Becca was determined to finish her GED and then start the dental assistant program the following year. The baby was healthy and hitting all her milestones, and Becca sent us a picture of her smiling for the first time. My sister's lawyer presented the plea deal during a video call from jail, but my sister started yelling before he even finished explaining it. She said she wasn't taking any deal because she hadn't done anything wrong, and the jury would understand she was trying to save a baby from an unfit teenage mother. Her lawyer tried to explain that the evidence was overwhelming, but she fired him on the spot and said she'd find someone who actually believed in her case. The judge appointed another public defender, but my sister refused to meet with them and filed paperwork to represent herself again. The guards reported she wasn't taking the medication they'd prescribed for her anxiety and was spending all her time in the law library researching cases where people beat kidnapping charges. She wrote letters to anyone who would listen claiming she was persecuted for trying to help a baby have a better life. The family therapist made us sit in a circle every Tuesday afternoon in her office that smelled like vanilla candles and old books. She pulled out this timeline on a big whiteboard and started marking dates when my sister had lied about things we'd forgotten. There was the time 5 years ago when she said she had cancer, and we all shaved our heads in support until Dad found out she'd never been to the oncologist she named. The therapist kept adding more lies to the board, like when my sister claimed she was accepted to nursing school but was actually working at a gas station. Mom cried through most of these sessions, remembering how my sister would stare at pregnant women in stores and ask to touch their bellies. The therapist said we'd all been in denial about my sister's problems because facing them meant admitting someone we loved was capable of terrible things. My husband finished his last day of community service at the youth center on a Thursday, and the kids threw him a little party with cupcakes they'd made. One boy named Isaac handed him this letter he'd written about how my husband's story helped him understand why he gets so mad sometimes. The letter said Isaac was learning to count to 10 and walk away instead of hitting when he got angry at his stepdad. 3 other kids wrote notes too, and my husband kept them all in his wallet. The youth center director asked if my husband would come back as a volunteer coach for their basketball team. The prosecutor called us into her office downtown, where the walls were covered with law degrees and photos of her kids. She spread out all the case files on this huge conference table and explained the trial would start in 3 months. My sister was planning to represent herself and argue she was performing a public service by targeting what she called an unfit teenage mother. The prosecutor showed us motions my sister had filed claiming Becca was on drugs, even though all the drug tests came back clean. She warned us my sister would try to make herself look like a hero who was saving a baby from neglect. Mom and Dad met with a real estate agent about their vacation home in the mountains where we used to spend every Christmas. They'd bought it 20 years ago and fixed it up themselves, but now they needed the money to pay back everyone my sister had scammed. Uncle got $1,500 back, and my aunts each got their money too. Grandmother refused to take anything, saying she didn't want their money, just wanted them to heal. The house sold in 2 weeks to a young family with 3 kids. I was picking out apples at the grocery store when I heard a baby crying, and turned to see Becca pushing a cart with her daughter in the carrier. Cade was with them comparing formula prices on his phone. The baby had these chubby cheeks and was wearing a pink onesie that said "Mommy's Girl" on it. The way they're digging up all these old lies from 5 years ago makes me wonder if everyone just chose to look the other way back then. That cancer story where they all shaved their heads heads. How did nobody question that until Dad checked? Becca looked tired with dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling at her baby and making silly faces to stop the crying. She saw me and froze for a second before Cade put his hand on her shoulder and whispered something. We talked for a few minutes about how the baby was sleeping through the night now, and Becca was taking her GED classes online. The baby grabbed my finger when I reached out and had the strongest grip for someone so small. Letters started arriving at everyone's houses with my sister's jail number as the return address. She wrote to our aunts saying I was jealous of her and had turned my husband against her. She told our cousins that my husband was violent and dangerous, and they should keep their kids away from him. Most of the family threw the letters away or sent them back unopened, but Dad's brother called asking if maybe we had overreacted. Mom had to show him all the evidence again, including the receipts for the fake bellies and the stalking videos. My sister even wrote to our old neighbors saying she was wrongly imprisoned for caring too much about children's welfare. The prosecutor got recordings of my sister's phone calls from jail through a court order. We sat in her office listening to my sister tell another inmate how she was going to get her baby as soon as she got out. She described Becca as a worthless addict who didn't deserve to be a mother, even though Becca had never touched drugs in her life. In one call, my sister said she knew where Becca lived now and would wait as long as it took. The prosecutor said these calls proved my sister was still dangerous and would use them at trial to show she had no remorse. My sister had drawn pictures of babies in her cell that guards found during a search. My husband and I drove around looking at houses in different neighborhoods every weekend for a month. Our house had reporters showing up asking for interviews and people slowing down to take pictures of where the baby shower happened. The neighbors were polite, but we could tell they were uncomfortable around us now. We found a place 40 minutes away in a quiet suburb where nobody knew our names. The moving truck came on a Saturday and we packed everything while trying not to look at the backyard where the gift table used to be. Grandmother finally agreed to give a statement to the prosecutor after staying silent for months. She was too weak to come to court, so they set up a video call from her living room. She sat in her favorite chair wearing her good dress and told the prosecutor about giving my sister $5,000 for prenatal vitamins and maternity clothes. Her hands shook as she showed bank statements and canceled checks. She said my sister had come to her house crying about medical bills and needing help to give her baby the best start in life. When the prosecutor asked if she wanted the money back, grandmother said she just wanted my sister to get help and never hurt another family. Becca brought her baby to the prosecutor's office for a meeting about the trial, and I was there too. The baby was 6 months old and could sit up by herself and was starting to eat mashed bananas and sweet potatoes. Lila came with them and told us Becca hadn't missed a single parenting class or pediatrician appointment. The baby was in the perfect weight range and had rolled over early and was already trying to crawl. Lila said in her 20 years as a social worker, she'd rarely seen such a devoted young mother. Becca was studying for her GED test every night after the baby went to sleep, and Cade was working overtime to pay for daycare. The prosecutor took pictures of the healthy, happy baby to show the jury what my sister had tried to steal. 3 months later, I walked into the courthouse for jury selection and saw my sister for the first time since her arrest. She'd lost at least 30 pounds, and her cheekbones stuck out sharp under pale skin that looked like paper. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame, and her hair was flat against her head instead of the perfect curls she always had. She kept telling her lawyer she didn't need to be there, and the judge made her sit down 4 times before threatening to have her gagged. The prosecutor asked potential jurors if they could be fair to someone accused of planning to kidnap a baby. My sister kept shaking her head and mouthing the word no every time someone said they could be impartial. We picked 12 jurors and 2 alternates by lunch, and my sister told the judge they were all stupid. The next morning, opening statements started, and my sister interrupted the prosecutor 6 times in the first 10 minutes. She stood up saying the prosecutor didn't understand that she was helping society by taking a baby from an unfit mother. The judge warned her twice, then said one more outburst would mean contempt charges and removal from the courtroom. My sister sat back down but kept making faces and shaking her head while the prosecutor showed the jury photos of the fake bellies and the stalking videos. When her lawyer gave his opening statement, my sister kept trying to grab the microphone from him. 2 days later, I took the witness stand at 8 in the morning and didn't leave until after 2 in the afternoon. The prosecutor walked me through finding the foam belly at the baby shower and discovering all the evidence my husband had collected. I described pressing my hands into the dented foam where my nephew should have been and hearing my sister admit she thought the teenager didn't deserve her baby. My sister stared at me the entire 6 hours without blinking or looking away once. Her lawyer asked me if I'd ever seen signs of mental illness before, and I had to say no, even though looking back there were probably things we missed. The prosecutor showed the jury the receipts for the fake bellies and the screenshots of my sister following Becca at the hospital. I identified my sister's handwriting on the notes about Becca's schedule and confirmed the credit card she'd opened in my name. When I finally stepped down, my legs were shaking so bad I almost fell. The next morning, Becca took the stand holding her baby who was almost 9 months old now. She described meeting my sister at the teen pregnancy support group and how my sister always sat next to her and asked personal questions. Becca's voice broke when she talked about finding out someone was planning to steal her baby the day she gave birth. She said she hadn't slept right for months and still checked the locks 5 times before bed. 3 jurors were wiping their eyes when Becca described being 17 and alone and thinking my sister was being kind when really she was hunting her. The baby started crying during the testimony, and Becca bounced her while explaining how my sister had found out her induction date and work schedule. My sister's lawyer didn't cross-examine Becca at all, which made my sister slam her hands on the table. My husband testified the next afternoon about following my sister to the bar when she was supposed to be at a doctor appointment. He admitted punching her was wrong and he'd already completed his community service and anger management for it, but he explained he couldn't let an innocent baby get stolen, and he knew the police wouldn't believe him without proof. He showed the jury the security footage he'd saved of my sister stalking Becca for 2 months. My sister's lawyer asked if my husband enjoyed hitting a woman, and my husband said no, but he'd do it again to save a baby. The jury deliberated deliberated for only 3 hours, which our lawyer said was really fast for a case this serious. They came back with guilty verdicts on all 7 counts, including conspiracy to commit kidnapping and fraud over $10,000. My sister jumped up screaming that they were all idiots who didn't understand she was trying to help that baby have a better life. The bailiffs had to drag her out while she kept yelling about how Becca was trash who would ruin her child. 2 weeks later at sentencing, the judge gave my sister 18 years with the possibility of parole in 10 if she completed psychiatric treatment. My sister laughed and said she'd rather do the full 18 than pretend she was wrong. The judge said that was her choice, but she'd be transferred to a psychiatric correctional facility regardless. Within a month, my sister was moved to a facility 3 hours away where she had to attend daily therapy sessions. The doctors called us after her evaluation and said her personality disorder was severe and would take years of intensive treatment to even begin addressing. They said she still believed she'd done nothing wrong and talked about Becca's baby like it belonged to her. Mom and Dad started going to a grandparent support group at the community center for families affected by crime. Dad said it helped to hear other people's stories about their kids doing terrible things and how they learned to live with the shame. Mom became a regular speaker after 6 months, telling new members that loving your child doesn't mean excusing their crimes. They even started a fund to help young mothers like Becca afford childcare and baby supplies. My husband got hired coaching youth baseball and soccer at the rec center, using his experience from anger management to teach kids about controlling their emotions. He'd tell them about consequences and making better choices without giving specifics about what happened with my sister. The kids loved him because he understood getting mad, but taught them how to handle it without hurting anyone. 1 year passed and we all drove to the community college for Becca's graduation ceremony, where she walked across the stage in her cap and gown. Cade held the baby up so she could see her mom getting her diploma, while Lila and Ramon cheered from the seats next to us. The dean announced Becca got accepted into the social work program starting in the fall, and she pumped her fist in the air. How did Becca manage to study for her GED with a baby crying at night? The way she balanced school and being a mom while dealing with trauma from someone trying to steal her baby makes me wonder what kept her going every single day. After the ceremony, Becca showed us her acceptance letter and class schedule while her daughter grabbed at the tassel on her cap. My husband and I looked at each other during the celebration and both knew we were finally ready to try for our own baby after all the therapy sessions. We'd spent months working through what happened and learning how to trust again and handle conflict without violence. That weekend, Dad sat at his desk for 6 hours writing and rewriting a letter to my sister in the psychiatric facility. He showed Mom the final version where he said he loved her but couldn't have contact until she took responsibility for what she did. His hands shook when he sealed the envelope and Mom drove him to the post office because he couldn't see through his tears. The extended family started having small dinners again, but half the relatives still wouldn't come after everything that happened. Uncle hosted Thanksgiving with just 12 people instead of the usual 40, but everyone actually talked instead of pretending. My cousin brought her new boyfriend and nobody asked about my sister, which made the whole meal easier. 3 years into her sentence, the facility called to say my sister finally started participating in group therapy sessions. The doctor said she admitted for the first time that she needed help and it was the first real progress they'd seen. She still wouldn't apologize or say she was wrong, but at least she stopped insisting Becca didn't deserve her baby. Meanwhile, Becca finished her first year of social work classes while working part-time at the women's shelter downtown. She started leading support groups for teen moms using her own story to help them see they could make it too. Her supervisor wrote a letter saying Becca was the best peer counselor they'd ever had because she really understood what the girls were going through. My husband and I found out I was pregnant right after Becca started her second year of college. We picked the name Hope before we even knew it was a girl because we needed something positive after everything dark. When she was born, the nurse asked about filling out the birth announcement for the newspaper, and we said no thanks. People at the grocery store would ask about Hope's aunt when they saw us, and we just said she was getting help she needed. We didn't explain or make excuses or tell the whole story anymore because it wasn't their business. 5 years after that terrible baby shower, our family found its new normal with weekly dinners and monthly game nights. We had security cameras now, and Mom kept the doors locked even during the day, which we never did before. Dad started going to church again and found peace in helping with the food bank every Saturday morning. My husband coached 3 different youth teams and taught kids about making good choices when they got mad. I watched Hope playing at the park and made sure she knew about boundaries and speaking up when something felt wrong. We taught her that family means love, but also means holding people accountable when they hurt others. The psychiatrist called last month to say my sister was making slow progress, but would need years more treatment before any release. We listened to the update and thanked them for calling, but didn't visit or write back anymore. Our family learned to spot red flags we'd ignored before, like the little lies and the way she'd always played victim. We stopped making excuses for people's bad behavior and started calling things out when they didn't feel right. Mom joined a support group for parents of adult children with personality disorders and became their secretary after 6 months. She helped new members understand that mental illness doesn't excuse hurting innocent people or planning crimes. Dad wrote in his journal every night about forgiveness and boundaries and how to love someone from a distance. My brothers checked in weekly and we all went to therapy separately to work through our own guilt and trauma. The extended family slowly came back together, but with new rules about money and trust and verification. Nobody gave cash gifts anymore, and everyone asked for receipts when someone needed help with expenses. Hope turned 3 last month and asked why she only had 1 aunt when her friends had more. We told her Aunt Sarah was sick and needed special doctors to help her get better. She accepted it the way kids do and went back to playing with her toys without asking more questions. Becca graduated with her social work degree and got hired full-time at the shelter, while Cade watched their daughter. They moved into a bigger apartment near the college and started saving for a house down payment. Lila and Ramon became like family to them and to us after everything they'd done to help. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were real and honest and free from the manipulation we'd lived with for so long. long. Thanks for sticking with me and wondering along all this time. It's definitely been a journey we've shared together. Until we meet again, take care. And if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.